is this?
That are going to be discussed this morning at the meeting. And so I'm just going to tell you guys a little bit how we'll run the Zoom meeting. I'm going to turn off the cameras for the applicants until your agenda item is up, just so that we can sort of keep focused on who are the sort of talking heads on the topic in the minute. So if you see yourself disappear, totally normal. I'll bring you back. I promise the computer didn't freak out on you or anything weird, hopefully. With that being said, I'm going to actually hand this over to Jay Parker to chair the meeting today. He is going to be the planning department designee. He's going to be my designee for voting and for chairing the meeting today. We're doing that because many people on the call know, but I'll be leaving my position with the town in the next coming month or so. And so we're sort of trying to do this with the transition while we're both still here. So with that being said, I will hand it over to Jay.
Good morning, everybody. This is a technical review committee meeting, June 10th, 9 o'clock. We'll start off with the first item on the agenda, roll call. Kayla Gray is here. Planning Director Jay Parker is here. Wayne?
Here.
Chris Heiner?
I'm here.
John Riendo?
Here.
John Schock?
Here.
Rich Bourbonnais?
Here.
David Flanders?
Here.
And Amy Goen, Special Legal Counsel, is here also, correct?
Correct.
David, you were having some technical difficulties. Are you all set?
All set now. If you can
Very
hear
good.
me, I can hear you and see you.
Very good. Next item is approval of minutes for the meeting from May 13th. Did everybody get a chance to take a look at them?
Yep.
I noticed that I was not listed as one of the attendees. I did not make the April meeting, but I did make the May meeting. So it should reflect that.
Okay, point noted, we'll change that. Any other modifications or revisions?
Nope.
I'll move approval as amended.
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Next item of business, TRC minor under TRC minor review. First item is a request for release of performance bonds and acceptance of roads and infrastructure. Hopkins Green request to release existing performance bonds and acceptance of roadway and infrastructure improvements by the town. Assessors Plat 48-2, lots 80, 86, and 126, located at 46 and 50 Hopkins Lane. Hopkins Green LLC is the applicant and the owner. Mr. Fiore, how are you this morning? Oh, you're muted. No, still muted. Hold on.
Better now?
There you go.
Better? Okay, sorry about that. Would you like me to start or in reference to this?
Sure.
So I think I'm just down to all the improvements are done on Hopkins Lane. The only thing I owe the Public Works Department is an as-built plan of Hopkins Lane itself. The field work has been done, and I'm just waiting on Dupree to send over the as-built plan for review to the Public Works Department. And what I'm hoping for is that I can get release of that bond subject to the as-built being accepted and approved by the Public Works Department.
Very good. Are there any other outstanding items other than the as-built?
I think everything is complete.
Rich and Tony, I can't remember, did we get the Form 128 for the bridge improvements?
Yes, I submitted that a long time ago, John, through Steve Clark.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't recall that we have any. I don't know if
if the bridge was installed per plan. I don't know if we have that yet.
I submitted a full package to your department probably back over a year ago from Steve.
Okay, we'll take a
Right.
look for it, Tony. It's been a
We'll
while.
find it. We'll find it. Right.
I'm very confident I submitted a full package from Steve Bach. He filed all the 120, all the proper forms that John and Public Works were looking for.
Okay, does anybody have, is it, you know, as far as my experience here, I haven't been here long enough to see is it appropriate, or do we normally condition a release the as-built, or is it we just wait until the as-built get submitted and we get the sign off from DPS?
Jay, this is Kayla. I can give a little bit on it. So recently, we've done a few of these of the releases where the TRC makes a recommendation to the planning board conditioned on the outstanding items, and then we hold the items until they're satisfied before it goes to the planning board. That's something the TRC could consider doing here if we're down to as-built being provided and forms being provided. We could do that, and then we could use the time in between now and whatever board meeting to make sure that public services is satisfied with the documentation submitted.
Okay, is that something that the committee is satisfied with, is okay with?
Yeah, I don't have an objection to a conditional approval. It's fine with me.
Yeah, we're fine.
Jay, I was over at the site yesterday, and I don't know what you want to do about it, but the trees are planted too deep, which means they weren't planted according to the town specs. So I don't know if you wanted to do anything about that.
I believe this may be the road that we're talking about. I don't know that we're talking about the actual Hopkins Green, but correct me if I'm wrong on that, Kayla J.
Yeah, this would be released for the full Hopkins Green performance bond. The performance bond was for surface course of asphalt, striping. It looked like shop bars. It was 16 feet of striping on the roads, and loaming and seeding. Items that were bonded seemed to be related to the pavement and road. The release of the performance bond is sort of sign off on the site. What I would say is outstanding landscape items. There's one piece that's I don't believe the planning board's approval of Hopkins Green had this, because the Hopkins Green project was approved actually quite a while ago, but then through tolling and extension and a few other things has brought us to current times. I don't believe there was a condition attached about certification from the architect on the plantings. And so now what I would say is if the plantings, that is sort of what the purpose of the maintenance guarantee that goes into place when the performance bond is lifted is for. So from the point in time where the performance bond is released, which is what we're discussing today, there'll be a 1-year period of time where does anything fail to thrive or work as it should have been. For example, the trees don't, because they were planted so improperly, they fail to thrive. That would be something we would sign off on the maintenance of improvements, probably likely more so than his completion of the site infrastructure work. That would be my thought.
Okay. So with that said, does anyone want to make a motion to grant the conditional approval of this bond release? Subject to the satisfaction of the as-built being submitted to the Department of Public Services?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Very good. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Hey, you probably want to do a roll call vote, I would think.
Okay, I'll start with myself. Jay Parker, aye. Wayne? Pimento?
Aye.
Chris Heiner? He's not a voting
Aye.
member, correct? John Riendo?
Aye.
John Schock?
Aye.
Rich Bourbonnais?
Aye.
That's everybody, correct? David Flanders?
I'm not a voting member, unfortunately.
Okay. Motion passes.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it very much.
Thanks, Tony. Take care.
Take care, Tony.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Good day, everybody.
You too.
Two. Next item on the agenda, development plan review, coastal community overlay district, LaFontaine, request to install a new 6x8 prefabricated shed on Assessor's Plat 87-3, lot 5-38, located at 647 Succotash Road, Potter's Pond, for Kevin LaFontaine. This application is actually not ripe for TRC review at this point, I believe. The installation of a new shed requires a special use permit from the zoning board, so TRC review and approval is not necessary. Wayne, do you agree with me on that?
Yeah, that's correct. The accessory structures such as sheds are only allowed through special use permit in the community overlay district.
Okay, so I advised Mr. LaFontaine about that. He is aware. I don't know if he's reached out to you yet, Wayne, but I'm sure he will if he hasn't.
Yeah, I have not heard from him yet. And maybe in the future, this is one to take a closer look at rather than sending somebody to the zoning board to put up a small shed.
Mm-hmm. Okay, next item of business under TRC advisory review, conceptual master plan review, major subdivision, flexible design residential project, Northwood subdivision. Proposed subdivision of 1 parcel into 14 parcels with waivers requested from the 100-foot buffer requirements associated with the flexible design residential projects and the street design standards as contained in the subdivision land development regulations. Assessors Plat 47-2, Lot 120, located at the intersection of Curtis Corner Road and South Road, True North Land Company, LLC. Good morning, gentlemen. I believe you're all muted.
Okay. Mute. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Good morning.
Good morning.
Do you want me to talk?
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
Let me just clarify. So this was recently before the planning board, and the applicants have worked to provide some revisions to address some of the concerns that were made at the planning board. The revisions were not linked on the agenda, nor were they in your packet. They were emailed when we received them on Monday. So if anybody's wondering if you had received them or not, they were sent via email.
Excellent.
Yeah, and I just want to state, Jay, unfortunately, the way the files, I'm not sure of the format, but I could not open them. My computer does not have, had it been a PDF or a JPEG or a Word document or an Excel, I could have done it. So I'm a little bit in the blind here, but that's okay. I remember from the previous night, the previous meeting we had with the applicant, so I think I'm ready to go.
Okay.
Okay, Jay, are you able to get the plan up on the screen by any chance?
Yeah, which one would you like? The geo, the one that ends in geo, or the overall site conditions plan?
You can do the one that, either one, it wouldn't matter. I can explain either one. Yeah, that's a little busier because it has topography. That's more of a complete plan with existing conditions, but we can go through this.
I have the other one open as well.
Okay. Okay, let's look at this one, and I'll show you the changes we made since our last meeting, and maybe you can point to them. As far as the road width, I had a conversation with Rich after the meeting, and we decided to increase the right of way to 40 feet on the road width. and to allow for, you know, just the paved area. He was fine with the 20-foot paved because there's no berm on that. But he felt that a 40-foot right-of-way would be a better fit. So we changed that to 40 feet. If you go to the entrance of the property where lot 15 was previously, you'll see that we've actually taken that LMI and put it into the subdivision at lot 2. And we've created a bus stop at the entrance there in an open space area. So that 10,000 foot lot, 10,000 plus foot lot is now added into the open space area, and that will become a waiting area for kids, for buses and stuff. And that seems like more of what was suggested would be appropriate for distance to the road and waiting area. And it's a big enough area so that if you had multiple people with children that had to go there and drop off, there's plenty of room for them to sit and wait for a bus. So that was a major change that we made on that portion of it.
Also, Earl,
Excuse me, yes?
Can I,
also
just,
to,
can I just clarify something real quick?
Yes.
That, it's kind of hard to tell. I'm going to try to get to it right here.
Yeah.
This is part of the open space that continues towards the west, correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay. I'm just looking at this boundary. Kayla and I were looking at this yesterday, and this boundary kind of throws you off because it almost connects to the roadway, making it look like it's a parcel, a separate parcel.
Yeah, Jay, we moved the road 20 feet to the south, you know, and we have flexibility with that. I mean, one thing that happened when we changed the road location from the Henry Case Way side to this on the other side of the cemetery, it negatively impacted us on volume for lot 3, because if we were to maintain, and that's why we were asking for relief on the buffer on South Road, because it just squashes lot 3 considerably. We were able to move it over 10 feet, but topographically we have, you know, such a variance there between the first curve and the point where it meets the cow path that we felt like we kind of wanted to flatten that out and move it. So we came up with moving it 20 feet towards the intersection. It made that lot, which was previously lot 15, a little bit smaller, but it created the bus stop there. We don't have a problem if you would like us to move it from that boundary a little more. You know, we're just playing with feet there, but it is all connected to that. And then as you take the road down, we hugged in creating the 40-foot right of way, we came closer to the wall. In developing this property, you know, one of our main concerns was to try to keep some of the historic features of this property in concert with the writing is of the flex plan. So we have historic cemeteries that are on open space, and we tried to put roads where there are existing stone walls. So if you see after the second curve where it flattens out, we're following that cow path, and we hope to keep that stone wall that's there. You'll see that's on the frontage of lots 4, 5, and 6. So in addition to that, we've increased the buffers along South Road. On lot 1, we increased the buffer from 50 feet to 80 feet. And the buffer facing north to the field at Henry Case Way, we've increased that from 50 feet, which FDRC recommends 10 to 50 feet. We've increased it to 60 feet, which is 10 feet past what, in my reading, that the recommended buffers are allowed. We've increased it, and the reason being is that there was a comment from the planning board that said when they're driving up South Road, they would like to see more of a buffer there. So we've increased that. That length of that, which is probably 260 feet, is incredibly dense with larch. It almost looks like they were purposely planted there. Those will remain along that 250 by 60 foot as a buffer. So lot 1, we are asking for relief from South Road, but we are increasing our buffer along the line of sight as you're traveling south, up South Road. So if you drive up, that lot 1 has a buffer of 60 feet to the north, and it'll have 80 feet to the south, not to mention also the topographical buffer that's created because that lot is significantly higher. At some points, it's almost 7 feet above the road as you pass that cemetery. So there are other things to consider rather than just the distance. On lot 2, which will be the LMI lot, we've created that buffer. We've bumped that up from 50 to 70 feet. And on lot 3, we've bumped it up from 50 to 60 feet. And the reason being is that it does get kind of squashed in there and pushes the house, the house site, the buildable house site, so close to the new road that it ends up being I think it won't be attractive within there, and there's plenty of vegetation there. When you look at it, there's a huge amount of vegetation. I know that we spoke with one of the neighbors, and his concern was the LMI on the main street, the neighbor across the street, and his main concern was that he didn't have the LMI in the street there, which we have moved to lot 2 now. So that's a major change on that. As far as the buffers facing the north, which is Hendrickens land, that's parcel along there that if you see it's just open field there. We've maintained a 50-foot buffer, but where his actual house lot is, which is separated by a stone wall, we've increased that to 60 feet. So we're giving him a 60-foot buffer. His lots are almost completely cleared to the wall. And we've
Can you go
increased
back on that
buffer.
one? Mr. Greco,
Yes.
can you just go back to what you said? I'm trying to follow it on the plan here.
Okay, if you look, John, if you look at the buffer on the north wall, you see
Yep.
where it says Tim D. Hendricken there?
Okay.
That, if you were to look from South Road, Jay, if you could show him from South Road, heading west,
Yeah.
we maintain a 60-foot buffer there, which is 10 feet past the required buffer, and that's densely wooded right there. That acts as 2 things. It gives them additional buffer, but it also acts as a buffer as you're driving up South Road, a visual buffer from lot 1. And then lots 12 and 11, we are maintaining a 50-foot buffer. The Handrigan house lot actually starts, Jay, if you could show what's perpendicular to that right there, that wall, his house is probably 300 feet back from the property line there. And we've increased that buffer to 60 feet. That's a 60-foot densely buffer. I personally walked the entire length of that. After I counted 100 mature trees, I stopped counting. So if you look at that property line, our north property line is over 1,200 feet long, and we're proposing 4 lots. 2 of the lots, we've increased the buffer 10 feet past what the maximum that's required on flex. So I feel like we have significantly changed our plan to address the concerns of what I see as one homeowner there who has cleared his entire lot, and the burden on buffering is solely on us. As far as buffering from Genesee Way, we asked the surveyor to give us accurate measurements to the property lines. Jay, if you could go to the west a little bit with that plan. If you could slide that over, yeah. If you remember, we got a call in from Bill Landry, an attorney hired by Kevin O'Neill. If you could point to Kevin O'Neill's property up top there. There we go. And he's asked that we put plantings in there. He has 383 feet, I think that is that what that number is there? I think it's 383 feet from the closest point. And this is not only forested wetlands, it's actual forest beyond the wetlands. We're not even near the wetlands there. And then at the other point of his property, he's 400, what's the distance there? I can't see it on this plan here. 460 feet away. You know, I mean, I can't see us planting a row of arborvitae 460 feet away after a forest and a forested wetlands has any significance on a house lot that the property line, not even the house itself, is 400 feet away. You know, if you factor in where his house is, there it's probably 500 feet away. So to me, that is an issue that could be cleared up with a site visit. And I've also contacted the attorney representing Henry Case Way, and I said, we're welcome you to a site visit, our meeting, whatever you want. We'll go there and walk this property, because we have people weighing in. We've spent 3 years walking every bit of this property, and we welcome anyone who would like to come as a site visit and see how thoughtful we've been to these neighbors. I mean, I know they've hired attorneys, but when you look at a 21-acre parcel of land with only 3 acres of wetlands on it, and you're proposing 14 lots, that's not an aggressive development. Even the fact that we've chosen to do this with Flex shows that, you know, we're trying to do this with respect to the historic value of this property, with the cemeteries and some of the areas that were farmland or grazing land with stone walls. It was designed around those features as the Flex plan dictates. You know, the relief that we're asking for on South Road, we did hire a landscape architect who has come up with infill plantings there. Any clearing that we are recommending is to remove invasive species so that what's there will be healthier. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else that we've done on this plan that we need to review. Oh, we increased the width on the common drive going to lots 12 and 1 from 24 feet to 35 feet, just to give us some flexibility in that access to those lots. And we've changed some of the lot sizes because we've added the LMI into the project. So if you look, I mean, the smallest lot in there is still, you know, close to a half acre. But with lots 11, 13, and 14, we've kind of moved the road in order to give us some room to fit those 3 lots in there. I think that's about it for the changes on the plan.
So this is John Riendo. I just wanted to thank you, Mr. Greco, number one, for the overview.
You're welcome.
I think at the last board meeting, and I'm just recollecting some of the comments made from board members. Yes. And I think there was, and it was more than just one individual. It was about 2 to 3 that were talking about that this was more of a conventional subdivision and not taking advantage of the FDRP ability to be more creative. And I think, for example, comments were made such as, you know, most of the lots are at 30,000 square feet. You could take those down, you know, down to almost 20,000, and thereby creating, you wouldn't have a buffer issue, because by shrinking the lots, you would have had, you know, basically the buffer all the way around that you needed. So I'm just, but in saying that, I'm cognizant of the fact that you've made some changes to the buffer both along Curtis Corner, but
South Road.
Thank you, South Road. Thank you.
And also the north property line.
Yep,
too,
and the north on 2 of the lots. So you've added an extra 10 foot of buffer, which takes it, you know, lot 1 is now at 60, lot 10 is now at 60. The other 2, 11 and 12, from what I'm seeing here, remain at 50.
Yes.
So I guess just a quick question, and obviously you brought in the LMI lot 12, thank you, lot 2,
Yep.
Thank you for that. So my question to the staff on the buffers, Mr. Greco alludes to 50, why do I have 100-foot buffer in my head?
So the 100-foot buffer requirement is would be along the South Road frontage, where the perimeter boundary abuts a public roadway.
Okay.
The the buffer that abuts adjacent residential property is a 50-foot required buffer.
I believe that's 10
Okay.
to 50 is required. Yeah.
It's 50 feet, but the planning board may allow it to go down to 10.
Okay.
Okay. So again, on the north wall, as
Yes.
we're looking at it, so 1, 2, 3, 4 lots, we see, again, lot 1, lot 10 have grown by 10 feet, so it's 60-foot buffer. Lot 11 and 12 remain at 50, which meets the requirement. So those meet the requirement. There was another question on access to open space. And I'm trying to remember that issue as I'm looking at the plan. I think it was lots 14, 13, in particular because they have no access to open space. And obviously through, what you're proposing now, that still would kind of remains, unless I'm missing something here as I stare at this plan.
There is access provided. Am I unmuted?
Yes, we can hear you. That's Michael.
There is, this is Michael O'Brien, one of the partners. There is access provided at the entry, and it's substantial on the first curve. So, in order to enjoy the open space, I mean, we could make amends and create some kind of an access at the end of the road down into what is considered Area 3. But we feel that there's sufficient access at the entrance to the road on the first curve. On the curve, it's probably about 100, 125 feet at the entrance near the bus stop. And that access would be obviously designated with a parking area so people could walk on down into the...
Yeah, John, in fact, if you look at the plan, I think you'll see it says walking path at the point that Michael's talking about. So...
Jay, could you blow that up, please?
Look at, I think it's C8, maybe, Jay, that first curve there.
Right here?
Yeah,
Yeah,
right
it's not
there.
on my screen.
There it is.
There it
And
is.
you'll
Yep.
see it. You'll see where it says walking path, John. So our hopes is that with those two lots there, 14 and 15, that these people would just walk along the shoulder right there and have access to that walking path. In one plan, we did have a walking path between lots 4 and 5, I think it was. Where was it, Michael?
That's correct.
Yeah, between 4 and 5, we did have a walking path so they could walk straight down from 4 and 5, which is still a possibility. If they were insistent on that, then we could probably still create that. But what we tried to do, if you look at the stone walls, between 5 and 6, we have an existing stone wall right there.
Yeah, I see it.
So when we squeeze these lots, we end up having to pull out these stone walls, and we're really trying to design around these historic stone walls. I mean, that's a cow path. If you look at the Potter Cemetery below, there's a path there that our walking path is, and that's where, hundreds of years ago when they had the funerals, they'd walk down that path to that historic cemetery. Even though that cemetery is basically abandoned, we're keeping that as a historic area. So a lot of the natural, interesting features of this property have dictated where we go. Even lots 1, 2, and 3, if you see that, there's a stone wall that's perpendicular up there. If you go up to lot 2, you'll see it. We're trying to keep as many of these stone walls in place. I'm sure we'll end up rebuilding a lot of them, but they've kind of dictated how that and the historic cemeteries, a lot of these features and topography have kind of dictated how this land is developed, so it's hard to meet everybody's goal on this, but I can sincerely say that we have spent 3 years on this property, and we believe this is a thoughtful plan. Sure, these lots could be brought down to 10,000 square feet, but we are above the 40% open space. So, and we intend to, once we get into this even more, is to have areas within those lots that would be no cut zones or trees that would have to be maintained because, you know, we feel that they're interesting and add to the quality of the site. But it's always a moving target. You know, as we do something, something else changes something else. So we really need a foothold in an acceptance of what we have here, and then we can work out some of those details.
If I can just interrupt,
Yes.
Mr. Riondo, the FDRP regs for the access to open space states that the open space shall be directly accessible to the largest practicable number of lots or dwellings within the development. Non-adjoining lots shall be provided with safe and convenient pedestrian access to the open space land.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Jay.
Yeah, and I think that, thank you, Jay, as indicated, and as I look at this plan, and I'm in at the cul-de-sac next to lot 13, and
Yep.
again at 14, so clearly that right-of-way provides walking access.
Yep.
Come on down. Obviously they can head north and access from there. They can continue south and hook a left just before the bend and access, but if they were to do that, that's second, as I'm looking at it, and is but I don't see lot 12. I don't see the extension along the wall of public access by lot 12, just to the east of lot 12. Should that not be extended?
Oh, you're saying,
The existing road access.
Yes.
no, or you're saying the road access, or are you saying?
No,
foot
well, the
traffic?
road access is there, but then, and again, right where Jay's cursor is the
Yeah.
access continued on the left, Jay? 90-degree left right there? What is that?
That right there, John, is a common drive for lot 1 and 12. That's actually a driveway. It's a 35-foot right of way, and that is the common drive, which,
I'm good there. I'm good there,
Okay.
Mr. Greco. I'm just saying, just to the left of that common drive where Jay's cursor is right now. Jay, good.
Yep.
I can't see it, Jay. Can you blow this up right there? Is that access?
No, I don't think so. It's a setback, I believe.
Okay, so it is a setback. All right.
Yeah.
So
that's
what I'm saying is that the access does not continue along the wall. You have roadway access, which again, allows pedestrians to walk, but it stops at the southern part of lot 12, and it's access for lot 1, but it doesn't continue up into the buffer.
May I ask a question, Michael
Sure.
O'Brien here? Would it be, to your way of thinking, acceptable to the board to extend, say, a 10 or 12-foot path that gets you to the open space and allows the residents to use that as an access into the northern buffer?
I would say yes to that. And I would also say, if you, again, that same theory along that wall, if you took that to lot 5 and 6, where again, you have, where you did have access into the Potter Cemetery, do that there. I think you're pretty much covered every lot. You're giving, the community of all lots access.
Multiple ports of entry.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a strong possibility between 5 and 6, Michael O'Brien. If we were to make that opening to the west of that stone wall, then we could move lot 6 a little over towards it would make lot 7 smaller, and then create a path right there that would bring them right down to the open space. We could do a 10-foot walking path there, John.
Okay.
I like that, Earl.
And then that might resolve that issue, and we could keep that stone wall there. We really want to keep these stone walls.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And again, I'm looking at, and I'm listening to the comments made from the previous evening from planning board members, and access was a big issue. Acknowledging that some of these lots were, again, the standard subdivision and not really taking advantage of the FDRP, but that would help.
John,
Excellent.
let me ask you a question now. When we read the comprehensive plan, it says that in development that we should take a direction as to taking advantage of any agricultural components or anything that promotes a healthy lifestyle. And that's why we wanted, walking paths, and we wanted community gardens. So if we were to do as you recommended and create a walking path between 5 and 6, that would get, so then lot 15 would just have to cross the street to go down to that walking path.
Correct.
It would put a dead center into the property so everyone would have access. Rather than create another walking path between lot 1 and 12, if we were to do that, then they could have full access to anything from that point. Would you be open to that? So we create that access in the center of the property for 15, rather than them walking up the right of way to go to the north. They could go to the south, which is where the community gardens are, and the hiking path begins over there. Would that be acceptable to you, do you think?
Okay, so I understand what you're saying about 5, 6, but you lost me on, so you were saying not to do between lot 1 and 12, not to provide that.
Right,
access,
not to provide that.
but maintain at the end of the cul-de-sac, so you've got access point heading north, and you have a new access point heading south to the walking path.
I'm saying that everyone on, when you, in the reading, it says that, the majority of houses have access to that.
I understand.
If we were to put the walking path between 5 and 6,
yeah,
that gives lots 14, it actually gives the center lots 13, 14, and 15 right there. All they'd have to do is cross the street. They'd have an opening right across the street from them to enter into the largest part of the open space.
Yeah.
And then all the other lots abut it.
Yeah.
So rather than create 2 trails there that would probably have to be maintained. And
yeah, I understand. I'm fine with that, Mr. Greco.
Yeah. So let's look at, oddly enough, one of our first plans had that in there. But as we address some of the other changes, it squashes things down. And topographically, now I know you say, well, you could make these lots smaller, but I want you to, if we could look at the other plan that shows the topography, Jay, I'd like to explain something that would kind of reinforce why we're making some of these lots bigger also. If we could get that other plan up.
1 second.
Yeah, John. So you can let's look at lot 7.
Okay.
If you could zoom into that, Jay.
Yep. 1 sec.
Now, those are all 1-foot contours that you're looking at there. So
Okay.
when you look at lot 7, you can say that's a 32,000 square foot lot. It's probably one of the biggest lots in there, but when you look at the contours,
Yeah.
keep in mind, when you look at the contours there, it drops off significantly. Okay. Now the town of South Kingston, not the state, but the town of South Kingston mandates 150-foot setback from the wetlands perimeter for a septic system. So we have to locate those up on that hill there. That's what's happening. But you can't build, you wouldn't want to build there. It's not a desirable site to build up. You'd have your septic system. So the lot needs to be that size just to accommodate a house and a septic system distance. So we're not only dealing with a topography that significantly drops off, we're also dealing with 150-foot, only South Kingston requires that for septic system from that perimeter wetlands. If the town wants to give us relief from the 150-foot setback, our soils are good, then we could probably make that lot smaller and make an open space there and just have an access road going to it.
Mm-hmm.
Perfectly willing to do it, but we can't do that. That's another requirement and an obstacle that we deal with in designing these things. So there's more than lot size to consider when doing this. That we like the flex plan because we like the 40% open space, but and we meet it.
No, I understand. I understand your point, and and right now, you're right, you're pumping uphill. So you're
Yep.
going to have an ejector pump. I get it.
Yep.
It would seem that way. And I think, in lieu of the fact that, we have allowed OWTS versus connecting you to the sewer system, there's
Yep.
some trade-offs all the way around. So
Yep.
I hear it. I think, okay, we just maybe food for thought. Thank you. And we can share that with the board at our next meeting if, how they want to proceed on that one. But I do understand and I get it.
May I interject another concern of mine? One of the board members brought up the fact that he did not like, or maybe it was the neighbors. They didn't like the fact that we were going to try to create a path for lots 1, 12, 11, and 10 on the northern open space to access down to the open space areas. And I don't know how that sits with the board, but it seems like a natural, it's a very, each homeowner would have a very simple access to get to that open space into area 3, I believe it is.
That's a good point. And I'm trying to personally speaking, since you've already done 10-foot added buffer on lot 1, you're adding 10 foot to lot 10. That could be, you already have 50% of the path. If that were converted to a path, you just have to make that additional 10 foot on lot 11 and 12. So I hear what you're saying. I'm going to defer to staff with a question. And Mr. O'Brien, I don't remember the comment I know it didn't come from the board, and I don't remember that comment coming from anywhere, but I'm not doubting you.
Okay, it may have come from council on the abutter.
Okay.
That may have been that.
But staff, I just want to pose the question to the staff. What do you think?
I'll give you my 2 cents on it. And I do remember the comment, and it was from an attorney representing the abutters for Henry Caseway. So I think that I agree with you. Okay, I'm going to give you guys some sort of conflicting thoughts on this. I agree with you. It's sort of it's a natural way to have those lots have a connection to the walking path. I think 2 things. One, I think that when it's serving as your required buffer and open space, we use the words separately in our regulations, right? And so your open space is sort of yours to use. The buffer can count towards your open space, but its intention is to provide the audio and visual screen to the abutting residential. So, and this is going to sort of what John was pointing out, where on lots 1 and lot 10, you have that extra, you're providing more than the buffer requirement, right? You have 10 feet of additional play there that you could, not the buffer, but could have a walking path in.
Gotcha.
If you want to use that walking path, I do think that it could potentially be viewed as a conflict to say that your 50 also contains a developed walking path through it, right?
Yep.
If the siting of the
Right.
walking path in there makes the buffer less effective, then you've substituted one problem for another.
Gotcha.
So that extra 10 feet, as John's pointing out, may give you a little bit more leeway to put a walking path in there. If you do put a walking path in there, I guess this is what I think. If you really put a walking path in there, I think when you're doing it, you should just show it on the plan where it's going to go, right? Because right now, your walking path stops at the nature viewing spot, sort of behind over near the wetlands to the northeast.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like really the plan is for it to continue along, right? And maybe be in that buffer. So I think just sketch out what that is and give us an idea also of what development of that walking path looks like, right? Is it a dirt walking path, or is it something that you're going to be bringing in some material for a bit of information on what that walking path looks like and how it fits within the buffer? It's your open space plan is going to make that an easier thing to get good support on, I think.
Great.
So, thank you, Kayla, for that. And I'm kind of going back to the previous meeting and recollecting some comments. And you're right, open space versus buffer are clearly differentiated. And I remembered Amy making the comment, which she's correct, was that open space must be available. So, and that's where the two kind of conflict a little bit. So, taking that idea off the table for the northern perimeter and looking at area 3. So again, you know, we're between lot 5 and 6, we seem to be saying the same thing, that some kind of access to that, you know, open space makes sense. And I'm just looking now for area 3, which, and correct me if area 3 is up by the O'Neill property, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So you have the walking path, which continues to go there, and obviously it dead ends and then comes back. So is the space due west of lot 10, it's open space, but yet it's not part of any, oh, well, it's not open. Yeah, it is open space.
It is open space.
It's open space, but
Yeah.
technically not accessible, correct? Except
It
to
could
lot
be,
10.
it could be accessible. It could be
It's very dense in there.
Yeah.
Very dense growth in
It's
there.
it's very wooded. It's dense, but you could easily make a path going through there.
I had one question, David Flanders here. What is the width of the walking path?
On the walking path, as you see on plan, David,
Yep.
Is like that lower area there,
Yep.
where you see the gardens. Something came up on the screen where I can't see it. If you could bump the plan up a little bit so I could see. There we go.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's all open there, and the walking path as you go where the Potter Cemetery is, David.
Right.
As soon as you cross that stone wall between 5 and 6.
Yep.
There's a huge canopy that you're under there. It's trees, but it's open. You pass that. You'll see there's a little kind of a cow pond there. It's a forested wetlands, but that's pretty wide there. In fact, where the community gardens is already cleared. That was a garden before.
Okay.
So that's wide. And then as you go to take that turn through the stone wall that you see there,
Yep.
right there, okay, then it starts to narrow up. And as you go deeper towards, you know, closer to the wetlands there, the path that's there is maybe, you know, it would need some clearing, but it's maybe like 8 feet wide, 10 feet wide, that kind of thing. It's narrow. You're going through some fairly dense areas right there.
Actually, I was willing to suggest that 8 to 10 feet is much wider than it needs to be.
Yeah,
for
I mean, it could be 5 feet. It could be a 5 foot path.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, David, not to change the subject, because I like the fact that we addressed this. But I think one reason that the neighbors to the west are concerned is they probably saw activity there when we were surveying. And they probably said, these people are building right in our backyard. But that was when we had the biologists there and we had the survey guys there. They're probably seeing people putting flagging and walking essentially through their back property line.
Right.
And they thought they're going to build a house in our backyard. I don't think they realized that it's, 460 feet away that the actual property line at lot 10 would be. So they probably just see activity and think, wow, this is coming in our backyard. But when you walk that path that we're suggesting there, I mean, it's very pretty, but you're in the woods, you're right. A 5 foot path would be plenty there. And we can actually, at that transition point where it goes through the wall there, we can state that the width of that path narrows down to a 5 or 6 foot path. And that would be fine with us. We don't want that to be an area that's cleared or anything. We do have an area there near, if we look down where the part of cemetery is, that we're suggesting would be a picnic area, because that is open with just a canopy. It's very nicely shaded. So if you were to go there and work in the gardens and then walk through that stone wall closer to the Potter Cemetery, that's already the floor there is cleared, and it just has a canopy. It's a beautifully shaded area. I think we reference it in some of the pictures that we've taken on the property to show that. So
Mr. Greco,
that's kind of undefined. That's just a wide area there.
Mr. Greco,
Yes,
I just want to interrupt. I think Rich has his hand raised. I think he's got a question.
Okay. Hey, Rich.
Hey, how you doing, Earl? So I think we talked the other day, Earl.
Yep.
And you represented a couple times at the meeting the other night that you were not clearing in those open space areas at all to the west of much of this, so all those people wouldn't be affected at all. But the drainage you've shown to date is somewhat modest in size, and it just shows swales and things. You know, that would be for the treatment of water quality. At some point, you're going to need a pond that addresses attenuation of peak flow, and we're going to ask peak volume as well. We want no additional peak volume going to the wetlands, because these people have already represented that they don't want water. And actually, we discussed this, I believe, even at pre-app. I was saying that we didn't want, we wanted attenuation of peak volume. So I'm not sure that what you've shown on your plan so far can happen within the right of way as it was shown. I think it's going to have to end up happening in the open space. That's just my opinion. I don't know if you've looked into that, but I'd be careful to represent that you're not clearing any of those areas if you end up putting a pond out there.
Rich, I did.
And I also want to point out one other thing, Earl, you brought up that I said it was okay to have a 40-foot right of way, but that's not really my decision. All I said about that, and I want to be real clear, is that we would not entertain anything less than a 40-foot right of way, because that's sort of the minimum standard that we have in our regulations. So what you had originally was 35 feet. We wanted to see it go to 40 feet on the right of way, and the 20-foot, we talked about that, the 20-foot right pavement, but it is not specifically our decision per se. It's more of a recommendation from our department, it's from DPS and from engineering.
I understand that. And I think you and I have had the discussion about paved roads at 20 feet. And I thought it was you who brought up the point that sometimes a smaller road actually is a safer road because people aren't traveling as fast. I thought maybe I'm wrong, but I thought you had mentioned that also.
No, my only discussion on that is that our standard is when you have the 40-foot right of way, you can go to 22 feet. But that's 22 feet includes a berm. In this case, you're not using a berm. And I understand the drainage standards have changed over time, so that really we promote the swales and things like that for water quality treatment. Rather than doing point source treatment, we try to do it as sheet flow and then treatment along the road. Those are all beneficial, I think, to the environment. So the 20 feet still would be the travel portion.
Right. So if you had
superfluous, right? So
I got you. As far as the drainage,
in a sense, you're still sort of meeting the standard. It's my opinion.
Yeah, I just want to comment on that, on the drainage portion of this, because after your comment last time, I actually contacted the engineer who working on drainage for this. And he seemed to feel comfortable that we can find significant drainage for this project in the way it's designed without losing the open space. As far as clearing open space to put a detention pond or something like that in there, he didn't feel like we would need to do that. But again, we do have flexibility with lot size. We have flexibility because we do have more than 40% open space with this plan to create some things. I mean, even if we had to do substructures like Cultex chambers or ADS pipe and create some subsurface drainage detention area or retention area, I think there are areas we could do that in the open space, because where the community gardens are, that's a low point. If we go back to the topography there, those are areas that we're not concerned with. If we did have to put something there like to accommodate drainage, just where it's naturally going to flow, which we're kind of like because it waters those gardens too. But that's an area where the water would go naturally anyway.
I would
But
also
I did bring-
interject.
I did bring that issue up with the engineer after you and I spoke.
I would also interject that the lots abutting the wetland at 6, 7, 8, and 9, and their slope encourage on-site drainage improvements for each of those lots.
Yeah, I think
So-
Jay, I think Michael, I think Rich is talking about the road drainage separate from, infiltration on individual lots.
Okay.
Am I correct with that, Rich?
DEM may still look to see
Right.
what you're doing for structures in order to manage that water, that drainage as well.
Absolutely.
I'm not sure what DEM is going to say about it, but it's sort of the whole thing. You got to look at the whole thing, and whether you're able to manage. Okay.
We are, and we have flexibility. We have flexibility with lot size now. We need to move forward, and I think with this plan that we have some flexibility with lot size if we do have to accommodate certain drainage, and we definitely have flexibility with buffers going to the west. I mean, we're 385 feet to 320 feet, 460 feet away. These are enormous distances considering, what we're proposing here. We can do a sightline analysis if necessary. I hate that we've spent a lot of money on this already, but if we needed to do a sightline analysis to show the distance between the O'Neill's property and that it's a significant buffer, that's, I don't see where we're not saying we're building 10 feet from a property line. We're 400 feet away.
Mr. Greco. Oh, go ahead, Kelly.
Jay, you can go for it. I'll leave.
I was going to add some perspective to this discussion. And since we just touched on drainage and open space, I wanted to remind you that the planning board is allowed to allow drainage facilities within the open space area, provided they're integrated and function with the open space design plan.
Yep.
However, the board is specifically allowed to prohibit any drainage facilities from being located in the required open space areas if the board finds that such facilities are in conflict with the intent and purpose of the FDRP.
Yeah.
So there is a little bit of a question mark there, knowing that, well, you do have some flexibility on lot sizes and you do have the extra open space area, but there's really an unknown there as to what exactly you're going to encounter when you get into design and actually figuring out what you exactly need. So I think that's an important component just to keep in the back of your head as you're going forward with that.
Yeah, obviously.
I don't think there's any, I don't think down the line, and the only reason why I bring it up, I don't think there's any problem with fitting it in. And I thought it was allowed in the open space, frankly, and it sounds like it actually is. But all I'm saying is that you're representing that you're not touching that open space. And what I'm saying is that when you come back for preliminary plan, it may be that you have to. That's all I'm suggesting.
Yeah. So
Okay.
maybe what we should do is to mention that there's a possibility that that some of this open space could potentially be used for maybe qualified permeable area or something like that.
If
we feel it's compatible with the open space.
Yeah, well, qualified permeable area is not attenuation. So you got to be careful. Right. Qualified permeable area is for water quality treatment. Attenuation is where you got to put in a detention pond.
Yeah. Slow it down.
In a roadway, it's going to be paved. You've got a lot of buildings. And DEM is going to be happy, I think, to see that you do on site on the buildings. Maybe you do something. Whatever you do, in the end, it's up to you. But
yeah,
that's 900 feet of road more. It's almost 1,000 feet of road, and that water volume's got to go somewhere. And we're going to ask again. I can't say this enough because you're going to go to DEM. DEM doesn't care about peak volume. All they care about is peak flow. But we're going to ask that you address the 100-year peak volume. And that's
Yep.
that's what I've asked on a number of projects, and it really kind of goes towards building code more than it does our ordinance. But our ordinance doesn't discuss it. But building code, doesn't want you to exceed, and it's really Wayne's question. When Wayne and I have gone back and forth about this a number of times, we're going to ask that you address the 100-year storm on peak volume as well as flow. So be careful that when you go to DEM, it may not come up. Your engineers, I don't know if they address it, but when it gets to us after you have a permit from DEM, we're going to look at it a little differently.
Yeah, that's an engineering question that I've brought up with our engineer, and he was comfortable with this site as far as dealing with the road drainage. And, and I know in the past I've done it on other projects where I've used like 2-foot ADS pipe buried with a water oil separator basin and then covered it so it's not even visible, and it's still, still works really well for a detention area. So, I don't know what he would recommend other than what he has, but I can tell you that our engineer is aware of that question and feels comfortable with this site. As far as location of it, where the gardens are, the community gardens, that's the low point of this property. Those are already open areas, would be a natural place for that. And I don't think the neighbors would have any problems with that in that location.
So, Mr. Greco, I think, the takeaway from all this is that there's some obviously design considerations, some significant design considerations that will need to be entertained.
We're a conceptual master plan here. So, I could pay for a full-blown drainage design on a plan that is in flux. So the most that we feel is prudent is we have an engineer weigh in on it. He's aware of the design and feels comfortable with it. But even the modification that we made from our meeting on the 28th to now was extremely costly. To look at the plan that you're looking at right now and to redraw this and come up with these changes, every time we make a change and it goes to the professionals, it's an expensive proposition. So, the most we do on something like that is they weigh in it. He does calculations based on a design and then says he feels comfortable that he can accommodate it. But we still have other hurdles to go through. And I'm sure when it gets to that point, our engineer will work with Rich and John and satisfy them on drainage. I think this plan will change probably. But not that much from the initial design.
Mr. Greco, I think that's kind of the point that I was trying to make is your project as an FDRP, we're looking at the entire lot and how it all works and how it fits. So if we allude to one thing or you allude to one thing at conceptual master plan and then preliminary, there's substantial changes because the drainage doesn't work or because it may cause an issue. So I think the design considerations are important to realize that you really don't want to, you want to make sure you're not going to deviate because it may not go well with the later stage of review.
That was the question to the engineer is, do you think this plan would deviate that much if you had to make some changes with that? And they felt very good about this plan.
Okay.
So
another point I want to make, and I'm saying this because of what I heard from the board at the last meeting.
Yeah.
So you have an FDRP that allows you to reduce the lot sizes significantly in favor of open space and buffering and all of that. I understood the concerns of the sizes of the lots and that there was, as John had said earlier, more in line with a conventional subdivision. You're meeting the open space, the buffer requirement, open space buffer requirement of 50 feet along the northern property line.
Yeah.
And you are not meeting the 100-foot buffer requirement along the South Road property boundary. There is, when you look at those two pieces together, you're asking for a waiver of the buffer requirements for the 100 feet, but yet you still have the ability to reduce those lot sizes and otherwise conform. And to me, I think that's something that is important, because it's the 100-foot buffer requirement, particularly with the public input, is extremely important. And you do have the ability of reducing it, although I understand it's not your preferred design, and you're trying to get to a project that works. But that is a pivot point, I think, on that, because you could meet that buffer, but you're choosing not to.
I agree with you, and I thank you for pointing that out, because I realize what you're doing is interpreting from all angles where this could go, and I appreciate that.
And I think that was the takeaway from it. So it's kind of like it's the elephant in the room, and I just want to make sure, so we don't
if
there's
that
no
is
surprises.
If that is in fact the elephant, I mean, and I agree with you, because it's hard. When you look at a meeting and you have a neighbor that's 400 feet away, and they're talking about buffers and complaining and hiring an attorney, and they hire Landry to represent them, and they're 460 feet away or something. And you say, well, you could move this entire project even closer to them. The problem with that, we have the 150-foot setback for the septic systems that the town requires. Let me ask you a question. Is there any waiver that could be given on that 150-foot setback from the permanent wetlands for a septic system?
It's a special use permit. Wayne can speak to it better, but the property would require a special use permit for the installation of an OWTS within 150 feet.
This is Amy Goins.
Okay.
The zoning ordinance doesn't authorize a special use permit to be granted in conjunction with a dimensional variance.
Okay, so Amy, I thought that was the case. So
What
if
would the
you look,
dimensional variance be?
Reduction of the 150-foot setback.
so in other words, they don't have the ability to give that waiver. Is that what you're saying, Amy?
Yes.
Yeah. So, that when we look at those margins and we look at, and the other thing I would like the board to take into consideration, and Jay, I totally appreciate where you're coming from with that, because, you're giving us an awareness on a broader view of this entire project.
Earl, before we get off topic along this, can I wrap up my thought on that?
Yes.
So, in looking in, again, I acknowledge and appreciate the amount of effort that went into the redesign of this so quickly since the last planning board. And I can appreciate the additional open space areas that you're showing on lot 10 and lot 1. What was that, 10 feet, I think?
Yeah, additional to 60 feet.
Yeah, but that's kind of like, that's above and beyond what is required. But what that is actually also doing is it's creating an easement situation where now that open space is going to require a 10-foot easement on lot 10, and it's going to require an easement on lot 1.
Yeah.
And it complicates matters with homeowners and trying to determine, where the enforcement mechanism to ensure that open space is not.
We could adjust that and make those lots smaller. If that were the case, either that or not included.
But I think you're meeting the 50-foot buffer, so it's something you may not even need to entertain.
Okay.
Okay.
Does anybody else want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, so this is John. I started off with that very issue, and thank you, Jay, for synthesizing it further. And this is just me speaking. So I think on the northern boundary, you're meeting the buffer, 50 foot. And even then you're allowing the 10 for lot 11, or you're proposing 10 additional for lot 10, 10 additional for lot 1. But on the south road, you're right, you're requesting waivers. And even though you have heard and you are bringing down, in the case of lot 1, you're going to 80 feet. In the case of lot 2, it's now at 70, or proposed at 70. In the case of lot 3, it's proposed at 60. And, so you've increased it slightly. But, and personally, I'm okay with that. However, that's just me. I can't speak for the balance of the board who have their opinions on this as well. So and I think Jay articulated that concern very well.
Yeah,
It's just a comment, to the Grecos and to Mr. O'Brien, just be aware of that. That's all.
John,
I'd like,
excuse me,
Before you
Earl.
go any further,
Go
I just want to close the loop though on one other comment. We were talking about, access throughout the development and you're right, originally Mr. O'Brien commented, originally we had a path going up through lot 1, 12, 11, 10 to access the land, and the neighbors complained, or the attorney on behalf of one of the neighbors, I think it was Mr. Dougherty, complained and took umbrage with that. And I think, he was commenting about, you can't, the conflict between open space and the walking trail as an example, which I disagree with him. Maybe the buffer, yes, but not so much the open space. So, I mean, it's clearly delineated here. We're fine with it. So my suggestion is going to be, right now the walking path as it heads north just ends. I think it'd be
Okay.
important to bring it along, take a right turn, bring it along so it's between that now concludes between lot 10 and lot 9. Yeah, lot
Yeah.
9, and close the loop. And now what you've done is you're closing the loop on this path. It's not dead ending. It's now
Yeah.
it's a short distance, although it's probably a good 150 feet, but realistically a short distance allowed between lot 10 and lot 9, the path to continue, and you've just done a closed loop the system. So
I like it.
I just want to make that comment relative to the public or the open space access for people in the development, and I think again on the buffers, if you're willing to take it to the board as currently proposed, that's your choice.
Okay, I wanted to.
John,
Go ahead.
Earl, let me
Go
interject
ahead,
here
Michael.
just a moment.
Yeah.
Regarding the buffers on South Road, we thought that in combination with the elevation of the road and how that interacts with the property, and also the mature stand of trees that's, covers at least 60%, I would say 70% of the immediate adjacent land to South Road, and then in concert with infill plantings that are specifically irregular in terms of where they're placed in depth, which creates more of a natural screening. We thought that the board would at least consider giving us the relief on those setbacks, such that we could further enhance with the house locations, the degree of separation between each other and from South Road.
Understand.
Do you have-
And again, I'm fine. Personally,
John,
I'm fine with that.
John,
That's
the
just me.
other thing, just to address that again, and I agree with Jay when he said, let's address the elephant in the room. And I think he's correct. And that was the reason for the 60-foot buffer on lot 1 on the north wall, which I think should stay at that. We can reduce that lot size so that it's not an easement and create that line, because really where the buffer is the most effective is driving up South Road, and you're looking through the open field, and you have that 250-foot buffer there that we're creating on this plan that's 60 foot deep. It's densely, it almost looks like it was intentionally planted, just staggered rows of larch trees. Keeping that there and increasing the buffer beyond what is required as a maximum on that north wall, and then we're asking to reduce it 80 feet. It does kind of ensconce that lot and creates a visual buffer as you're driving up South Road. And that was a comment I think that was brought up by Steve at the planning board meeting. He said, when you drive up, you're seeing that lot 1 over there. So we increased that buffer there, and we're asking to reduce it on South Road, which, as Michael says, topographically, at that point at the cemetery, the land is already 6 feet above the road I think we have elevations that we show when the landscape architect did the analysis. So we're already 6 feet above the road there. So when you're driving in front of that on South Road, you're looking essentially at a retaining wall on those first 2 lots. On lot 3, because we moved the road now, the entrance from Henry Case Way down further, it just squeezes that lot. And we're going to squeeze them even more as we put a walking path between 5 and 6. But, we also have to think about how does this look within the subdivision when we have houses that are, right at the perimeter of the road. We like them to be set back just so visually it creates some kind of, distance there. So it squeezes it. That's why it's a graduated buffer that we're requesting there. And I don't know how that'll play out, but we're trying to accommodate all of those things and keep that stone wall that runs on which would be the western property lines for lots 1 and 2. We're trying to maintain that stone wall as their front yard. I think that'd be beautiful.
Mr. Greco, I'm just going to interrupt real quick. Michael, I'm going to continue. I've been muting you because we're getting feedback from your phone. So if you've noticed, no, it's Michael, not Mr. O'Brien. Just so in case you're wondering how you end up getting muted, I'm trying to clean up the audio on this. So I think we've had a good discussion on the buffers in the open space. The one point that I wanted to make and I didn't was going along with my comment earlier about the open space buffer to the north. The buffer along South Road, if there was a way of making it consistent and not staggered like it is, I understand your intent of what you're trying to do, but again, the enforcement, the way that complicates enforcement and complicates the encumbrances on the other property is a little difficult.
Jay, do you think it would be better to change those lot sizes to reflect the graduating buffer, or are you saying, we look at each parcel of land separately based on a number of factors, based on the historic, stone walls, cemeteries, whatever it is. We look at each property, views, and we say, what is the quality of this lot? So that's why we asked to graduate that, rather than just say, okay, we'll agree, to submit a 70-foot buffer straight across. So rather than have a 60 to an 80. But when we look at them and we say, you're driving up South Road, you can't, when you're driving north on South Road, you're not going to see a lot of that stuff because of the wall, but you do see through Henry Case Way open field on lot 1. So we increased the buffer to the north there, and we increased the buffer from what we were asking for relief from 50 to 80 on that one. Then you get the cemetery there that acts as a buffer in itself. It's a huge wall that surrounds it. So at that point, we reduced from 80 to 70, and then we've squeezed lot 3 and reduced that to 60. Do you think, would it be better if we said it's just 70 feet straight across? I don't know. I'm trying to.
I'm not going to offer what you should do, but I do think a perspective to consider is sort of, as you've already alluded to, along South Road, the perception from outside of the development, from either the board or the public, knowing that there is a solid 70-foot or 80-foot or 60 or 100-foot buffer along the property boundary is easier to decipher and comprehend than a series of buffers that are staggered because of how it looks from the inside of the development.
Yeah,
I think the perspective, you need to keep the perspective in mind, and many times simpler is better.
Yeah.
Not only for application, but for interpretation by others when they try to understand what the project entertains.
Earl, maybe a point of reducing the lot size. If we were to maintain the irregularity of those buffers at those 3 lots, maybe you're thinking of reduce the lot size such that the buffers do not include the lots themselves. Maybe that's a tangible possibility.
I think you guys have heard a lot of feedback on a number of different points, and weighing in on design options going forward is obviously your purview and what you guys want to do. Certainly something to consider. There is one other thing that I wanted to bring up that we hadn't touched on yet. In your open space management plan, you mentioned a garden shed.
Yeah, yeah.
And also the bus stop. I think it's important to show those. You need to show those structures because they are going to be located in the open space, and the planning board is going to want to know generally how large, where they're going to go.
Yeah, in fact, it's a good point. I was reading that. I read the FDRP all over again the other night, and I've read it like 3 times since we've had the last meeting, and I did see where they said any structures that you're going to propose in open space should be explained. And I agree with you. It's just we did not have a lot of time between that meeting and this meeting. We pushed our engineers and surveyors to the maximum to get this to you in time for this meeting. And I appreciate you guys putting this up and taking a look at it. I know it's a rush for everybody.
Mr. Greco, I understand. I'm just putting that out there that you should
absolutely
have. It's not a criticism.
It's going in our notes right now.
Okay.
Jay, regarding the abutters to the north and to the west who've hired counsel, would it be appropriate, not for us, because we've reached out to the abutters about a site visit, but would it be more appropriate for the planning board or the planning department to extend an invitation to those abutters to visit the site, particularly at Henry Case Way and at the Genesee Way
property? Yeah.
And we need to do a bit of a mowing there, and that's going to be happening soon. But we can make it sort of seamless, where we're not dragging you through the woods, but we could give you an idea of the varying topographies and the varying access points for the open space, et cetera, et cetera.
Understood. I will go out and I will say no, that we won't, the staff won't extend that invitation, as it's not something that we typically do on every application. I think the extent of effort is what you as the applicant want to put into it as far as inviting.
Well, we did, Michael. I sent an email to Henry Case Way, to their attorney, and I invited him I said, we're open to a meeting this week. I said, we're modifying a plan. Please get back to me. I've heard nothing. So I would
Did you also extend to Genesee Way?
No, I didn't. I didn't extend to Genesee Way. In my mind, I will do that, though. I will do that. But
Mr. Greco, let's that's a discussion for you guys that you guys can
you guys have you had a lot on your plate today. I realize that.
Is there any other members of the TRC that have issues that haven't been discussed or touched on?
Yeah, Jay, I've been kind of quiet. So I just need confirmation. What is being proposed for the width of the right of way? Because I'm looking at the plan. It says 35
40 feet. 40,
okay, well,
we've increased it to 40 feet.
All right, well, the plan says 35. Just to let you know, the top of drawing 3. So that needs to be corrected.
Oh, if you look at the entrance there, let's go down to the entrance.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the plan set. It said Northwoods Way, 35 feet wide private.
Oh, yeah.
That's on sheet 3.
I got you,
So 35 feet of right-of-way width, and the paved width is what?
20.
No, 40 feet of right-of-way width, John.
40, it's 40 feet.
Okay, 40 feet.
Yeah. It's a typo. It looks to me like sort of just a hanging jet.
Yeah, he probably
from the changes.
Worked.
Yeah. So the drawing as shown shows, and of course I can't measure it online. It's a 40-foot wide right-of-way.
It's dimensioned at the beginning of the road, John. You'll see 40 feet right there where Jay is pointing out now. It shows 40 feet. We have increased it to 40 feet.
Okay. And the paved width?
20 is proposed.
With or without a Cape Cod berm?
Without.
Okay. And I do share Rich's concern. I mean, I know this is still pretty preliminary, but, a detention, retention, water treatment pond is a pretty big feature. So
Yeah.
I'm concerned that the plan set doesn't show that at this point. And then my last comment is, I just want a confirmation that you're proposing potable water, correct? Suez?
Yes, we've had meetings with Suez, and they
Okay.
are open to it.
And that's, you won't be coming back at a later date saying, well, we're changing our mind, we're going to go to well. Is that correct?
No, we had a very productive meeting with Suez, and they've agreed to do that.
Okay. But I just want to make sure that you're showing water, you're staying with water, potable water to the end of the project. You won't be back at a later time asking for wells.
That's correct.
Yeah, I mean, who knows what changes in the world, but that is, 99.9% of our intention to do that.
Okay. That's all I have.
Okay, this is
Thank you,
Kayla,
John.
if I may.
Go ahead, Caleb.
Okay, so one thing I wanted to talk about is we had Amy Goins join this technical review committee meeting to talk about the waiver we were requesting. You guys are requesting for the road width. If you guys remember back at the planning board, we talked about how there was some discussion about what it was that we were asking for a waiver from and how that should be pursued. And we have Amy for a limited amount of time this morning, so I want to make sure we're able to hear from Amy on that. And then I want to make one other little note. It relates to the location of the stormwater. Right now at conceptual master plan, you guys would be well served to put on the open space where you see yourself putting a stormwater feature if necessary.
Okay, good suggestion.
Because you're going to want to, you don't want to be coming in at preliminary plan knowing it's necessary to make the site work and have the planning board have not considered it and whether or not it would be allowed to be part of the open space, the area would be pulled out. You want to put that in there now where that conceptual location would be so that if necessary, you're not being told you're making a conceptual level change to your drainage down the road.
Excellent suggestion.
The other thing, and it's a small comment on that, we keep talking about how the drainage is proposed within the right of way. And when I was looking at the plan yesterday for a little while, it's not. Right? The drainage is proposed on private lots. It's within the setback, the setback lines for them, but it's the private lots that actually seem to be on the site plan. The locations that are sketched out for the conceptual drainage, they're on those private lots. So, we keep talking about them as being in the right of way. They're actually predominantly on the lots. And in that, I just want to make sure you guys are sort of thinking that through because your developable land lot size on there needs to subtract out the area of land that is considered unsuitable for development. And unsuitable for development contains held under private or public utility easements that have above ground utility infrastructure. Drainage areas would be considered part of that. If there are drainage swales being built on lot 4, lot 3, on those lots, you're just going to need to make sure that you're describing that as it's accurately happening. I think I keep hearing it described as drainage within the right of way. That is not what you're proposing. So adjust it appropriately so that what you're proposing matches what you discuss there. Yeah. And that's sort of what I just add in on drainage. And then I'll turn it over. I think that was a pretty clear comment. I don't know if there's much discussion needed on it, but then I want to turn it over to Amy on the road.
Okay.
This is Amy. What is the specific question regarding waivers that are needed, given the revisions to the plans?
Yes, so I'm gonna give a little summary because I was trying to think about that. I was trying to do a little bit of work on this yesterday afternoon too. Right now, how do you gentlemen have it summarized in the request for relief? Jay might actually know this answer quicker than anybody, but I believe you guys have classified yourself as local public. Right? The road is classified in one particular way. in the public improvement standards. Which way have you guys classified it and then asked for relief one way or the other, or have we just not gotten to sort of that level?
It's a private road, but with public water.
Okay, so that's a little bit of a different answer. So I'm going to ask my question differently. I think it might help us get there better.
Okay.
In the public improvement standards of the subdivision regulations, we call a road basically either a local public road or a local private road. And then those types of classifications put forward like a right-of-way width, the number of lots accessed by them, et cetera. And so I think what came up at the planning board was that whichever way it was being asked, one way or the other, it's either, the lot is either going to classify as like a local, for the purpose of figuring out what kind of relief we're giving, right? We either look at it and say, if the road is classified as a local public road B, I think is the classification it would fall under for the number of lots, but I'm not looking at my notes right now because limited screen size. And then you'd be asking for a relief from the right-of-way width, right, that from all the pieces in that, and from it being public, or you're proposing it as private, and then the relief being requested is about the basically exceeding the number of lots proposed. But Amy, I think what we had talked about at the planning board, and I got a little confused on it, was whether or not those were definitional, like what those category of roads were definitional in nature and how the planning board would process relief on it. I want to bring one thing to your attention, which is that when I was looking into it yesterday, the FDRP regulations for streets seem to try and give the planning board flexibility on these. And basically there's a section in the FDRP that says streets in an FDRP can be publicly or privately maintained, and that they should meet the street design standards of the regulations when designed to be public, and that private streets shall be adequate for the intended use and vehicular traffic and shall be maintained by an association of unit owners or other means. So I think it seems to me like pretty clear that the intent is to let the planning board be able to give relief to the ownership and the standard of it. Being proposed as private, it seems the prevailing standard should be, is it adequate access being provided, and not necessarily meeting the public improvement standards for the road. But I think that that is the piece we were sort of playing.
Yes, Kayla, you're absolutely right. So the first step is what kind of street is it? What classification does it fall under? Is it private? Is it public? If it's public, it has to meet the street classification standards, or else a waiver needs to be granted. If it's private, I agree that provision within the FDRP regulations does give the board flexibility to approve a design that may not match up with the standards for public roadways, but if it's adequate according to the planning board, it can be approved.
So it is private.
Yep, so being private, I'd say really, I think that was honestly just a question we needed to sort of get to where we just got on it, and we weren't there at the planning board meeting the other night. And that's sort of why we've asked Amy to join us today. But so, gentlemen, when you guys are going through this, and when the planning board is making a decision on it, what'll happen is the planning board will likely cite the standards for private roads.
Yeah.
Explain what those are. Explain how you've exceeded the number of lots that need to be serviced by a private road, and then acknowledge, but the adequacy of this road is considered to be acceptable or not acceptable because boom, boom, boom. And I think that is the way to do it, is come at it as a private, propose it as a private road. Don't ask for relief from the public improvement standards for that road, because you're not building a public road.
Yeah, it's an important question to answer, because that section is a little bit internally inconsistent. Whereas the first sentence says shall conform to the standards, the second sentence and the third sentence clear it up a little bit. It needs to conform to the standards if it's going to be a public roadway. If it's a private roadway, it simply needs to be adequate. And I think the board can be guided by the standards for private roads set forth within that table, but it's not necessary for the board to grant waivers from those standards for private streets within an FDRP, as long as the board finds that the proposed roadway, that the private roadway as proposed would be adequate.
I understand. That makes sense. So we do have the board does have flexibility on the private to grant that.
That's my opinion.
Yeah, that would make sense. It's a logical conclusion. So we need to state that in our presentation.
So do they, technically, should they clarify their request for waivers then?
Yes, I think it should be clarified.
Okay.
Is there any other questions that we could answer, or is there anything else that needs to be addressed, do you think?
Any members of the TRC have any further questions?
I would just want to explore the idea of having the roadway be permeable asphalt.
I think that's a question that I will bring up to the engineer. I'm not a fan of permeable asphalt. I know it's used. I know it was used at the URI parking lot.
Well, it has to be maintained, of course. But
yeah,
This is John Schock. So, I mean, the only thing I'll say about permeable pavement is it's okay when you're down. I'm not an advocate of it. When you're down south, it's fine. When you're up here,
yeah, it just falls apart.
You can't sand the road. It has to
Right.
be all asphalt. So
There's a
even
lot
if
of
they-
problems associated with
So
it.
even if they had a contract that strictly used salt, cars going into that subdivision from South Road are going to track sand in, and they're going to include the aggregate. So
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, in concept, it's a great idea, but in practicality, it's problematic. And for that reason, my office doesn't do it.
Yeah,
So,
I know URI used it, which was crazy. They pulled out thousands of yards of beautiful gravel, brought in stone and did permeable asphalt, and it just doesn't hold up like normal asphalt would. And then there's an association, so they're going to hire someone privately to plow the road and maintain the road. So it would be nice if we had something that would withstand the test of time.
Yeah, work for the long term.
Long term. We did another subdivision that's private called Thulis Woods Way. We did normal paving there that's held up for 20 years now, and it's beautiful and it works great. We did, we haven't had any issues with it, but I would like to stay away from the permeable asphalt if we could.
Okay.
For driveways, and in sensitive areas, I can understand that.
So are there any other further questions from TRC members?
Yeah, I just want to close the loop again on my suggestion of closing the trail loop. And just for the developers to consider closing that loop and bringing it to between lots 10 and 9.
After that suggestion, I wrote that on our notes, John.
Okay, thank you.
And then also you're talking about an access path between 5 and 6, and then that's included in our notes also.
Okay, thank you.
So these are, I think we have some good takeaways from this meeting. Obviously we're not there yet, but I hope that you guys realize we're working towards this. So,
Understand. Thank you.
thank you.
Jay, this is Wayne. I got a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
The cemetery, I drove by there last week and noticed that the wall is deteriorated on that. Who's responsible for that?
I think the state is, because it's an historical cemetery, right?
I don't know. But I mean, the wall right on South Road is pretty bad.
Yeah. I'm not comfortable touching that. I mean, the graves are right up against that retaining wall there. So I just would not want to be the guy who would just go in there and try to move those blocks. I mean, it's something that we would work with someone with possibly, but I think that would require someone from the state to
I know
weigh in.
Yeah, I know it's a Rhode Island historical cemetery, but typically they're owned privately. They're
Yeah.
private cemeteries. They just have a designation as a state cemetery.
Yeah.
Maybe John Schock can weigh in on ownership of that.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm just looking at the GIS map, which isn't always correct, but 99% of the time it is. It looks like that is not called, some cemeteries in town are called out as a separate plat and lot. That is not, so I'm assuming it's part of this parcel. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
So
It is, yeah.
it's part of this parcel, whether there are heirs to people interred there and a maintenance responsibility for that, I don't know. But, you know, it's part of this parcel. So, I mean, to me, it's a question for Amy. You know, are they responsible to maintain that cemetery?
The question is whether the owner of a property containing a historic cemetery has maintenance responsibility. I think the answer is yes, but the answer is too brief because it is a complicated question. I know I had another question from the town regarding cemetery, so let me look into that and follow up with you.
I also understand, if I could respond a little bit, in the event that, you know, it did become our responsibility, we'd need approval from town council because we're within 25 feet of the border of the cemetery in any excavation or repair or whatsoever. And I'm not sure who the correct person is who would be needed to be present during that excavation, because obviously it's right on the road. The graves are right there. It's a tricky one.
Yeah, let me look into that and follow up.
Thank you.
And as Kayla mentioned, I do have to leave. I don't want to keep a judge waiting, so I apologize to check out of the meeting, but I'll follow up with anything. Thank you.
Good. Thank you for the input.
Thank you.
And Earl, I just want to make sure that, you know, that 25 feet also goes from the interior borders of that cemetery. So when they're excavating for those homes, that has to be maintained.
Oh, yeah. We understand that.
All right. Thanks. That's all I have.
Thank you, Wayne.
Very good. Anybody else? Okay, I think you guys have some ideas and some things to think about going forward, and appreciate your attentiveness to getting the plans revised for this discussion today.
Great. Have a good day, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so
Appreciate
much.
it.
Enjoy your day.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Okay, we good to go with the next one? Anybody need a little break? Okay. Next item on the agenda on the TRC advisory review is conceptual master plan, major land development, zoning map amendment, and comprehensive plan amendment. Shepherd's Run. Proposed major land development application, zoning text and map amendment to rezone from R80 to Route 1 Special Management District, and a comprehensive plan amendment to support the development of a destination resort and winery, including boutique, hotel, winery and vineyard, restaurant, indoor and outdoor events, spa and fitness center, and extended stay bungalows on Assessor's Plat 50-4, Lot 12, located at 4780 Tower Hill Road. Morgan Show and Hospitality is the applicant, and the owner is Ocean Pastoral Center Incorporated. Mr. Showen, how are you this morning?
Good. How are you guys?
Very good.
Very good. Good to see you.
Good. Well, thank you for taking the time. James Callahan is here as well, especially to help out with all the text and zoning and comp plan language changes, because that was definitely a first for me. So we took a stab at that piece, and I can obviously answer any questions on the plan and design and that exists there. But
I do have your documents digitally, so if there's any that you'd like me to put up on the screen to share, just let me know which ones of the ones that you provided, and I can do so.
Great. So obviously we had a work session and listened to all the feedback, and we attempted to refine the plan from there. So you know, maybe Jay, where best place to start would be the proposed plan in that drawing set G 3.0.
Okay.
So anyways, kind of going through the list here, you know, there's not a tremendous amount of work being proposed, especially actually in phase one. We're really renovating existing buildings and putting in vineyards. And then we attempted to, it's page 4 of that, Jay, as you're going through.
I'm just trying to clear up my screen real quick so I know where I'm going.
Yep, no worries.
What page was it?
Page 4. Perfect. Oh, one back.
One back?
Yes, please. There you go. So if we look at the right-hand side of this, we attempted to line out the different phases color-wise. So the light, I don't know how it's showing up on people's screens, the light pink, purple color is the phase 1, which is really just renovations to the existing structures. There is a walkway that extends across right now on the, looking at this plan, to the right-hand side. So I guess that would be the east side. You can see like a little pink, your cursor to the right there, Jay. Sorry, there's a, let's see where it says hotel units restaurant. You see that oh, do I have a control now?
Here you go.
You can see my mouse. Okay, so right
No,
here.
I think you need to just accept.
Oh, I need to accept. Let's see. How do I accept? You are controlling self, King Self. There you go. Hey, all right. So right in here, there is an existing walkway that extends across that we are planning to demo. It blocks a lot of the views from the main historic manor house. But other than that, we are attempting to basically reuse the existing structure, and that's so that pink area and all these green blocks that you see, that's all vineyard, proposed vineyard space. And then grading of an outdoor tent site, which I'm highlighting right here, but it's just the dashed line on the inside. And it's, as you can see from the grades that are on this plan, it's marginal grading that we're talking about. We just want to have a flat area there. So that'll be a 4,000 square foot tent site. And then phase 2 and phase 3 are this roadway that we're looking at here that would connect to these bungalow units. So phase 2 would be the roadway and any infrastructure that needs to be put in place. And then phase 3 would be putting in the bungalow units. But essentially that's the work that we're talking about. You know, the language and adjustments to the comp plan and inclusion in the Route 1 SMD, that's extending that across the road. That's the majority of what was submitted. And, you know, James is on the call to speak to some of that as well. But the idea is to really reuse the infrastructure that's in place. So we attempted to showcase where the existing septic system is. The main sand filter system is right here on the screen. There are a variety of tanks that are located. You can see them kind of dotted on this plan throughout, that then filter into this denitrification system, and then the field, the leach field, drainage field is in this area over here. The existing system is designed for 120 full-time residents with cafeteria and all the rest of that. So we believe it's comprehensive enough to handle the 33 guest rooms that we're talking about here. We have, I don't know if I can say today we've submitted. We are in the midst of submitting. It's today or tomorrow to CRMC. Dupree Engineering is handling that piece for us. But essentially we're submitting the exact same plan as this. And that's more or less the story on it, but I'm happy to answer any questions and go through any items if there's anything that you guys see that maybe we're missing here. Hopefully not, but yeah.
So Mr. Schoen, thank you. This is John. And just to your very first comment where you indicated you wanted to demo, and I'm familiar with the property, having toured it previous to you coming into the picture. So the demolition, that's actually the connection between the two existing buildings.
Yep, and let me, since I have control of this screen here, I'll try to highlight that for you.
Perfect.
There you go.
So
it's
right
that
there.
Walkway, right?
Yep.
Exactly.
So that walkway, and this is for everybody, and I think you just may have, it's 2 level. So there's almost like a subterranean level, and there's a level above grade. So that's a 2-level walkway. So what I'm hearing from Mr. Schoen is you're going to demo the above grade walkway, retaining the subterranean walkway between the 2 buildings to the left and to the right, correct?
Correct.
Okay. It's a great visual, by the way.
I was thoroughly impressed. This is what happens when actual architects, I guess, get involved as opposed to me drawing things.
Mr. Schoen, have you had any discussions with DEM regarding the existing septic system?
We've just submitted for, or we are in the midst of submitting for the predetermination letter with CRMC, but nothing beyond that.
Oh, this is John Chocolates. I see in the latest document provided, public sewer is not anticipated for use for this project. So you are in the sewer feasibility area, future area, so they need to do a sewer feasibility study. And I know it's not easy to get from, the buildings to the town sewer system. Have you had any discussions with either, it used to be the Public Building Authority, the state, with regard to tying into their system, or other nearby connections for sewers in lieu of OWTS?
Yeah, I mean, very preliminarily, we looked at it and we attempted to cost it out. It obviously, due to the grade changes, it's it's a hike plus pumping and everything else. And this system was installed in, I want to say 2003. I have to verify that. We do have the plan set from when it was designed. And what our understanding was that as part of being in the SMB, there is some language that if sewer system does come to the property, we're very open to figuring out the connection at that point. But working through other people with the gravity, that was it was pretty expensive, to be quite frank. I mean,
okay,
really expensive.
So again, your consulting engineer is going to have to prepare the sewer feasibility study, which has 9 criteria, of which one of them is economic feasibility. So you can't hang your head entirely on that one criteria. You have to go through the other criteria. And that's in
Okay.
section 19-115 of the town code. So I don't know who would be preparing that for you folks.
I can work with between James, who's on the line, myself, and Preet. We'll figure out who.
Yeah, if they get any questions while they're preparing, just have them give me a ring.
Okay.
Or Richard.
And is that a requirement for? I didn't see that listed out for the concept. What was that for? Like preliminary plan? Is that? But or did I miss something? Because I apologize if I did.
I think, and Jay and Kaylee, you can correct me if I'm wrong. You got to get a letter from me saying sewers are available, or what the status of sewer availability is. So I can't give you that until I get the sewer feasibility study. So, I think it can be done in a parallel course. We certainly don't want to hold you up, but that's going to be a little bit of a project for you to get that feasibility study done and address all the 9 criteria.
Okay. Any other concerns?
This is David here on Conservation Commission. I'm more concerned about the proposed 12 bungalows. Given the grading that's going right down into the Pennaquamsket, I would definitely like to see sewers, address, take care of them rather than have the OWTS. I think it's a very sensitive area, particularly because of the grading down to the water.
One of the, we were trying to say, David, just let me get back to that plan there on the same grade elevation as the existing, and part of our analysis was to look at to see if even maintaining the same what the final capacity is of this OWTS. Again, the existing system, I believe it's designed for 120 full-time occupants, and our load is considerably less than that. So if we can even utilize this existing system, that would even be our first goal, obviously. But we need to do further analysis on that. But we are, I don't know if you're checking these grades here, we are trying to stay up on that higher grade rather than down below.
So, Mr. Schoen, specific to Dave Flanders' comment, can you describe the intended use of these extended stay bungalows a little bit?
Yeah. So these are, transient guest bungalows. The goal is for really their uses during the summer months. Think of them as the summer cottages that people would be at. They're not designed as residences or full-time houses, anything along those lines. But they are designed to have 2-bedroom type situations rather than in the actual structure down here. These are standard guest rooms.
Okay.
And one of the design intents, Dave, I think just to highlight as well, that we're showing them in these pinwheel designs, as we're calling it right now. This is what Centerbrook Architecture designed. The goal is to look at the existing trees and try to find if there are some great, highlight specimen trees, and those are going to be the centers of each of these cul-de-sacs. The idea is for these to be sort of the bungalows in the woods, I guess, is the whole concept. So the idea is a cul-de-sac in the center with each of these roads around hopefully some kind of signature specimen tree.
Got it. Thank you.
And just for some other clarification, the extended stay bungalows are obviously not for residential purposes. That's not the goal here on any level.
While we're on the topic of the bungalows, this is Kayla. I wanted to give you guys just a couple of smaller thoughts, and then I'll give you sort of a couple of other thoughts. So the location of the bungalows there, in relation to that and the property line to the north, if your application is successful, you'll find yourself in a sort of mixed use, sort of commercially zoned property. And that parcel to the north is R80 zoned residential. And so it's likely that we'd sort of ask you to be looking at having a transition yard in between those. So transition yards in our regs and our ordinance they're sort of formulaic. And an issue for preliminary plan. But right now, what I would tell you is the sort of widest requirement for those transition yards is a 50-foot buffer. So you might want to just look to make sure that where you're citing those bungalows that are closest, you're giving yourself you're sort of considering what you're going to have to maybe do there for the transition yard, making sure you have 50 feet. Just I think that's something that would help the planning board see how those new bungalows that are proposed in phase 3 interact with the neighbor to the north eventually. That's sort of a little comment on them. If I can, I wanted to speak a little bit about some of the zoning ordinance amendment and comp plan pieces. Like we said, those are sort of the bigger prevailing things you got going on here. So the sewer question, I fully understand the desire to use a system that is 16 or 17 years old there, hasn't been utilized in a long time, and might be of a suitable size to accommodate what you've got there. With regard to what needs to change, great. You all know this from your application material, but I'm just going to sort of paraphrase it. The special management district sort of asks to be served by public water and sewer. And then, as John pointed out, the parcels in the future sewer service area, which relates to the wastewater utilities provided. That reference comes from the wastewater code, chapter 19, I think, if I'm right on that. But that's where you'll see sort of that piece, Ryan, about how the sewer feasibility study is required and what that sort of means about utilities on the site. I think it's an interesting proposal, right? Because the idea on sewers here, I think one question I think I have sort of fundamentally is why initially the special management district, when written, said these lots must be serviced by public water and sewer, right? What was the goal there? Why was that sort of such an important thing? And therefore, what would we be thinking about to change that? And that is a backwards working research project that I've not sort of spent some time doing yet. But the planning board is sort of more versed in that sort of historical knowledge to talk through with you guys anyways. But one thing that certainly does seem to play into it, and it won't be news for you guys, we alluded to it in the pre-app, is about this CRMC land designation here and how sort of a preference for one utility versus another happens. So I think one thing that would be helpful here is having as much information as we can about that septic system. When I was reading through the excerpts of the CRMC Narrow River SAMP, there is a fair amount about making sure that septic systems, when they're used, are nitrogen reducing systems and certain things like that. That would be helpful for us to understand, because one thing that we certainly would be looking at is how that utility change matters in the special area management plan. I think the idea of reusing the existing system, I understand that proposal. I think the idea, one thing that I sort of looked at a little differently is the location of a new OWTS for the bungalows. I think I see that as sort of a different piece, right? If you've got a system there now and you want to keep using it, that seems to me to be sort of a little bit more based on what's sort of there on the site, right? The idea of putting in new OWTS systems in that proximity to the Narrow River, I think, is the part that is going to be kind of the discussion for us to figure out here. This is conceptual master plan, and that is sort of, well, let me make an assumption about state statute. I think that's intentional. that we consider the recommendations on the zoning ordinance change at the same time as conceptual master plan. Conceptual master plan is also where the town solicits comments from state agencies. And so we'll solicit comments from CRMC to sort of help us understand how we should be sort of considering the utility changes out there. The utilities, I think the sewer is no doubt sort of the most sort of complicated matter you've got here, just because there are several layers of input on it, right? You've got DEM who permits the systems. We have CRMC with their SAMP. We've got the zoning ordinance requirements, and then we have the wastewater code. So there's sort of a lot at play there. To John's point, considering them through right now, sort of all in tandem, is probably in your benefit, because, you know, to be frank, if we were to see a successful petition to amend the comp plan to have sewer be allowed for these lots, but then the wastewater code is not changed and falls to land to require sewer anyway, you're sort of right back in the same sort of loop. And so I think there's a lot of, I think working on your sewer feasibility study sooner can help us all make sure we're approaching that the right way. That is sort of my thoughts on sewer. Another request being asked for zoning ordinance amendments was the special use permit, relief from the requirement for special use permits for restaurants serving alcohol here, noting sort of the intensive review process you're already in the midst of, and that's sort of the necessary need to go to the zoning board for that. I think that is a very reasonable proposal here. You're certainly going through some significant review. One thing that I would say is that in the course of this, a suggestion to perhaps improve that amendment might be something that specifically says that you will delineate your alcohol service area in review with the planning board. That's the sort of difference here, is when you go to the zoning board for the special use permits for alcohol, and Wayne, stop me if I'm wrong here, you delineate an alcohol service area on your site, and then the license the town council gives you follows that. And so flushing that out a little more to say that the planning board will review the locations of your alcohol service area, and that the town council's liquor license would sort of follow the planning board's input on that service area, instead of the zoning board, is just an administrative improvement for us on our end to make sure that goes sort of linearly. I imagine it's not a controversial request for you all in regards to the zoning change, but just something that'll make it a little smoother for us, I think, to make sure we get the right information by the end of the day with your liquor license. Third, I'm just gonna run through them and then I'll stop talking. So third, I've got the open space. The request to have open space allowed in the special management district include farmlands, gardens, and vineyards. I think that is very in line with South Kingstown. I think that it might not be necessary, because I believe the category above it, lawns, landscaped areas, or wooded areas, might sort of cover it. But if we're amending things anyways, I think it is a very sort of suitable to South Kingstown and its value on its agrarian roots to have it written in there with gardens and vineyards. So I don't think you'll see any opposition from staff on that. And then the last one was about the noise thresholds. In Article, where am I? 507.13 of the zoning ordinance, we have noise thresholds for those. I looked at those a little bit this morning about what those numbers were. The long story short of what I see when I look at that table is basically with residential neighbors, it would be a daytime restriction to 60 decibels at the property line and a nighttime restriction to 50 decibels at the property line. I want to share with you all that when we've done permitting for like weddings and events before, we've actually about 3 years ago did a pretty extensive set of conversations with an applicant looking to hold events on a farm, and we did a lot of discussion about what the standard noise level would be given a certain distance from a tent that might be playing amplified music to those neighbors. We found there the sound expert who actually weighed in on that ended up finding that the sound volumes to be expected at property line a bit of ways seem to be considerably lower. The planning board ended up, I'm saying this sort of is to give some context to you all in the way the sound conversations have gone with us recently in event permitting. I believe they ended up setting a threshold of it being 12 or 13 decibels at a property line, and that was considered to be reasonable given the distance from the tent to the sites. I'm saying all of this to tell you, I think it is very unlikely that your amplified music would be exceeding a 50 or 60 decibel threshold at your property lines, given where it's located. Yes, but I do think that in the idea of sort of the intent of the amendment being to see if that wouldn't apply to you all, I think those thresholds there are really quite high, and that if you were going to be looking for it through event permitting anyways for those accessory events and that outdoor space going on there, you're going to find the planning board would look for something probably within that anyway. And so you might amend the zoning ordinance in some way to have this not apply to you all, but I imagine it's likely these thresholds are not probably inappropriate thresholds or hard ones for you to meet. That was sort of my overall comments on the proposal. In general, you know, I think it's wonderful to see a reuse of this building like this going on.
Yeah, some of the proposals we made were maybe a little bit, the noise and things like that. We just wanted to make sure we covered things that might come up. Not that we thought it would, but just in case. That was our goal there.
Yeah, understood. I figured I'd give you some thoughts on it back for this meeting too.
And to be clear, I mean, from my standpoint, oh, sorry, John.
Right. Just one more thing on the OWTS while we're talking here. I can give you I went to the DEM website. The OWTS permit number is 0232-0532, and it looks like the design flow was 7,500 gallons a day. So I don't know if you've got that information yet. And back then, if it was approved prior to 2008, you divide the flow by 150 gallons a bedroom, so it looks like you'd have 50 bedrooms. But that's you can go to DEM and get a copy of that design permit application.
Thank you, John. Yep. On the sorry, did somebody else want to talk?
Sorry, Ryan, this is Wayne. Kayla, I just wanted to kind of weigh in on the special use permit that you'd already talked about. Would it be beneficial to also throw in there the 56.3, the use code, which is the accessory entertainment to a restaurant or bar at the same time to the liquor? That way there, if he wants to have entertainment or other forms associated with the venue or the restaurant, he wouldn't have to come back to the zoning board.
Yes, and I actually think, James, tell me if I'm wrong, I think that is the way James has written it in the proposal, and I paraphrased it a little too short.
Just in case you wanted to have some like music in the restaurant, like a light jazz or something for the hotel guests after the wedding, that kind of thing, just in case that occurs. So I think we did ask for that as well.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah, and to be clear, and I think, Kayla, you understand, and I appreciate how you paraphrase the whole thing, but we definitely don't think we need to exceed 50 or 60 decibels. Our main concern was, I think there was something in the SMD that, and it was part of the conversation that we had at the last planning commission meeting. It said something about accessory music isn't allowed or something in the SMD, which seemed a little, not in line with the intent. And I think that's more of our concern than actually having the decibel, or having to come back for special use permits every single time the goal here is to have weddings and have events. And my understanding from the planning commission is they want to have an event space. That was actually one of the things that they were looking for with the hotels that were created in the SMD across the way. So I want to make sure that we're clear on that and put the language in appropriately. If that makes sense?
I think it does. It does. Wayne, if I can put you on the spot. I feel like you know this reference closer than I do, but do you know whether or not it's in the special management district, is it the list of prohibited uses that prohibits outdoor entertainment, or is it or is it something different that you guys are mentioning, Ryan, that relates to sort of like accessory events and whatnot?
Bill, let me look at that while we're continuing on this. I'll quickly go through the ordinance and get back to you.
And then Kayla, to your delineation of the alcohol service area, that makes perfect sense. We can draft that up quickly, and obviously, John, thank you again for the sewer feasibility study. We'll get right on that. So those are all things we can hop on.
And Kayla, I was just thinking of something. You mentioned the design or the locations of the liquor service areas. Would that include like the tent and things like that? Or is that a separate permit process?
No, I think you wouldn't. I think honestly, well, to be honest with you, I'm a little out of my lane because the zoning board usually does these, but Wayne's in the middle of something else. But so my understanding is you would delineate any areas where people might be walking around with a beverage, et cetera, any areas that you're serving alcohol as part of your daily operations. I think you would want to include it all. I think your best bet is to cast the wider net than the other way around. But Wayne could weigh in on that a little bit more, but I think that is functionally how we would look at it, is you would delineate whatever areas you intend to be serving alcohol, the tent, the restaurant, et cetera. If you expect people to be perusing around, wandering around the gardens with being able to enjoy a beverage as well, and that's permissible, showing that area to wherever you sort of envision people moving around with alcohol.
You might just need a blanket permit.
You might hash the whole site over just with a hash mark and say all.
Kayla, so in the SMD, I was just looking, there is an excessive noise element to that, and it basically says that no outdoor speaker shall be permitted without the express written consent of the planning board.
Okay, great. So that's perfect. So that's really something that when we go to the planning board, we'll make sure the planning board decision sort of expressly acknowledges in there for you guys, so that you have that.
Thank you.
I have one other if we're sort of going through things. I'm gonna applaud the reuse of things on the site. I genuinely think we talk very often about reuse and redevelopment, and very, very rarely does it actually come forward in a way that is trying to reuse sort of all of the pieces of something there. This is my segue to talk about your parking on the basketball courts or tennis court areas there. I think the idea of reusing those areas makes a lot of sense, and that's why I'm saying that about sort of the redevelopment and reuse concept. A conceptual master plan, a thing that would be helpful for the planning board to have here relative to sort of your site development plans, is like an area calculation on the parking areas you have and how that stacks up to the zoning ordinance requirements for parking on the site, just to give an idea of, you don't need like a design of the parking lot right now, but something that sort of gives an idea of, if there are X number of spaces required, you know that you have sufficient area to give them, or that if you're going to have to expand an area or something, we're just identifying where that area will be.
Okay, that makes perfect sense.
So that would be sort of like twofold, right? An area calculation on the parking fields you have depicted, and then just a breakdown of what the zoning ordinance will require for parking for the uses.
We will note both.
Thank you.
Does anybody else, any other TRC members have any questions or comments?
No, other than just to comment to Mr. Schoen in particular for the activity, the work that he's performed to date on this. Documentation is detailed, looks good. I think the staff has provided additional quality comments, and that's helpful as we move, as this moves forward. And so, again, I like the project. I think this is a very good adaptive reuse for a property that has been idle for the last 3 to 4 years with really minimal, consideration as to what to do with it. And I think this particular use and the planned use is ideal. And the fact that the property is, again, out of sight from Route 1 in particular, you can't see it from Route 1. It's, the down gradient of the slope is there. And yet, it's a beautiful site, has some potential distant views as well, ocean views. So yeah, I'm very, I like what I'm seeing, and I can only encourage the applicant to continue. And, as chair of the board, I know the board will give this very careful consideration. I think when we did do the pre-app, I think you heard some of those comments. There was just a genuine like for the proposal. It's just working through the details, which I think can be addressed.
Thank you.
And before we end, I just want to ask the TRC and John particularly, the sewer feasibility study. I was looking at our checklists, and there isn't a requirement on either conceptual master plan or preliminary in reference to that. Should we resolve the sewer feasibility study and determination sooner than later as this progresses forward?
That question directed to me, Jay?
Yeah.
So I think, but you do require in the preliminary stage me to sign off that sewers are or aren't available, and I can't really do that until I get the study to say either I agree they should be sewered or disagree. That's why it's kind of like the chicken and the egg scenario.
Right.
So go ahead.
And my comment is because of the associated amendments that are being proposed referencing sewer, I'm just wondering if we are going to consider this whole package, if it's better to get that earlier than later because of the associated amendments related to it.
Yeah, I think it does. In my opinion, I think it does make it to get it as soon as we can.
Yeah, I think have to because of the way they're asking to phase it, because you have to get approval of the entire project at master plan. So the second phase is the infrastructure for bungalows. So you're going to have questions and answers about sewer versus OWTS.
Brian, you were reverberating. I don't know what you got in the background, so it was tough to understand your comment.
I think we got to get his microphone checked. He sounds like a transformer.
You are a transformer.
I guess my question on that would be just so I have clarity. I don't have any issue moving forward with the sewer feasibility study. My only concern would be holding up the rest of the application. It sounds like, John, you're okay with that. I just wouldn't want to stop the whole process while that moves forward, if you guys are comfortable with that.
So to me, I think unfortunately the sewer versus OWTS is, in my mind, the issue for the site. And it's not a small issue, it's a large issue. So I don't, given that, I don't know I mean, I don't know if I can vote in favor of moving the project forward without that information.
So at the master plan level, we need the conceptual idea for the project, which includes potentially either sewer or the OWTS. Obviously, we have a preference in one due to a variety of factors. At the preliminary plan level, say if we get that far, hopefully, we'd be required to get all state, well, not state, but all local permits at that point, correct? That's the requirement by statute, I think.
Yes.
And we could put off any state permits to final plan. Would that give us some leeway to move forward potentially for master plan while we work on the sewer feasibility? And if we can get that done prior to master plan, we certainly will submit that to John. Does that make sense? A conditional approval of some sort or ability to move forward?
This is Kayla. James, I'm going to tell you really frankly, I think we want to look into it a little bit, to be honest with you. I don't want to give you it. I don't want to sort of, I just don't want us to promise an answer that isn't what we would do, or nor do I want to exact something out of you that's not right for us to exact out of you.
But Kayla, with that said, can I cut in real quick?
Yep.
This is not what they're asking, what Mr. Callahan is asking is not unusual. We've done this before at the master plan level where we understand, you know, particularly in the preliminary plan is where the details get worked out. So I understand what John Chalk is saying. He wants a feasibility study. I get it. I don't think that should prohibit the process from moving forward and the applicant from moving, you know, his master plan forward. That's just one of the issues that has to be worked out. So I think it's pretty cut and dry. We've done it before. We do it a lot. And I don't think that the sewer feasibility study is any reason why we can't allow them to proceed to master plan level.
John, you know what? I appreciate your comment and I agree with you. The thing that makes me hesitant about that, or makes me wonder how it's gonna interplay in review, more than like an authority to say yay or nay on it, is they're also applying for an amendment to change the requirements that sewer be provided in the zoning district they're asking the parcel to become part of. And so the sewer, the idea of using sewer using the existing septic on the site is inevitably going to be part of your conceptual master plan discussion, because it goes beyond your conceptual master plan standard discussion. And it's a discussion about also amending the zoning ordinance to not require sewer in the special management district. And I think that those conversations are absolutely going to inform each other. And that's why I'm saying, I don't know that you cannot continue to go forward, but I think that in discussions about whether or not sewer is required and what is required in the special management district for utilities and the recommendation on the zoning ordinance amendment, that the sewer is the wastewater disposal on the site is going to be a topic of conversation for that, because that is directly what's being asked for, which makes it a little different than the usual ones, that it's not as simple to sort of just say that conversation as a conversation will be discussed at preliminary plan, because you're actually pulling that conversation in a bit on the wastewater piece. I'm not saying that I think it's wrong for it to go forward with conceptual master plan, but I do think have to expect that in the conversation about using sewer on the site and in the special management district, there's going to be some discussion about the utility provisions out there and what it costs or takes to extend them, et cetera.
And just to add, they're also going, after their conceptual master plan approval, they will be going to address the zoning the amendment itself with the council, correct?
Yeah, so this would be a recommendation on that.
Right, prior to preliminaries. So I think in my eyes, that was where I was going with it. I think it would be obviously it would behoove the applicant to be able to have that information to tee the recommendation to the council up for what the request really is for.
Right. I mean, sewer becomes a really complicated topic. Sewer is just, it's not, well, it's almost always a complicated topic, I'll be very honest. But sewer on this one, so say the zoning ordinance amendments are successful exactly as written, right? Nothing changes on them, they're adopted as proposed. What is not amended still is the wastewater code. That is going to say that the wastewater provisions on this parcel are governed by the results of your sewer feasibility study. And so were you to get to a place where you've got it approved in the zoning ordinance to allow sewer within the special management district, to allow septics within the special management district for wastewater disposal, at preliminary plan, you all just want to be aware that by pushing out that sewer feasibility conversation, you may very well have another shoe that drops that's coming from a different section of authority than the zoning ordinance about sewer or septic on that site. Does that make it clearer for you all? Sort of, that is really the piece I'm trying to get at here is if you put off the wastewater provision and our interconnection requirements from Chapter 19 of the town code, and you separate that from the question about amending the zoning ordinance for sewer here, they're going to be two separate conversations, and they do both impact what you can do there.
Just so we're clear, you're saying that even if we get the amendment to allow septic in the SMD on that side of Route 1, it still is up to, I guess, DPW and John to say, based on the sewer feasibility study, whether there should be sewers or septic, correct? Is that fair?
That's my understanding. John, correct me if I'm wrong, because that is in your lane more than planning.
That is correct.
Can I'm not sure I'm fully understanding. It's my and forgive me because this is something that I do every day. But the way that I understand it, there's two pieces that we're talking about here. One is a letter from John that says whether sewer is available or not available. And my understanding is that sewer will be available at some point, but the fact of the matter is public sewer does not exist to the site today. The second piece is the SMD. In the SMD, from my reading of it, and again, it says sewer is required when available. But when it becomes available, you may have to connect to it. I don't, from our perspective, we don't really have an issue with connecting to it when it becomes available, and that can stay consistent with the language of the SMD. The issue that we have is that it isn't available today, and any requirement of sewer basically says you have to connect to a neighbor's property and create a shared agreement and all the rest of these things, which is, and we have an existing system in place that we feel pretty strongly meets the capacity. In all of that being said, I have absolutely no issue moving forward with a feasibility study. Right away, basically getting with DeBreet and saying, hey, this needs to happen. But at the end of the day, our phase one work that we're talking about doing is all within the existing building at a lower density than what was there before. So I'm a little confused why it would be as big an issue. I understand the cottage piece as well, adding more septic systems if that was required. I see all that kind of stuff down the road. But I just don't understand. I'm not understanding today with this existing septic system. If somebody says, "Yeah, that septic system isn't valid, it doesn't work," then I guess we have another issue. But the fact is, there isn't sewer available today, and the SMD language specifically calls for if it isn't available, then this is your option until it becomes available.
So can I
Am I
respond?
missing something?
My analogy is South County Commons right across this Route 1. Sewers wasn't available when they proposed that in the SMD. but the developer constructed the sewers, you know, to satisfy that SMD requirement. So I think to state that it has to be available to the property line is not necessarily true. It's, is it feasibly available? And that again goes back to the sewer feasibility study. That's the reason for the sewer feasibility study. Look at all these 9 criteria: conformity with the comp plan, you know, OWTS condition, OWTS failures, and proximity to the property. There's 9 criteria there that need to be addressed to determine and make a determination. Does it make sense for the property to be mandated to connect to the sewers, or can they go with an OWTS? That's the whole purpose of that section of the wastewater ordinance.
And just to jump in again, I think that moving forward is really the risk that we take, isn't it? I mean, not that you want to approve, you're not giving approval, but if we do move forward and ends up for some reason that the sewers are required, it's going to be, you know, a risk we've taken in moving forward and spending more costs and putting more time into the project. And if the sewers are required, it's going to be expensive, but I think Ryan is willing to take that potential risk to move forward now because we have a lot of work to do regardless. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that, this is Kayla. I think that makes sense. And James, I agree with you. I don't think we really have a position to tell you that you can't ask for a decision on this application, right? But inevitably, yes, I think I agree with exactly what you're saying here. It's sort of my goal to make sure you know where those other things that might come along the way are and how we best see sort of reducing the likelihood that you're in a position where you've expended a whole lot of resources to then hear something count to the counter. But yes, absolutely, you know, it is certainly at the applicant's risk. It's just that these 2 things, you know, if reviewed together, might create a little more predictability, understanding that you want to move forward with your conceptual master plan piece and that you're willing to sort of know that the wastewater utilities is going to be a conversation that happens separately. That's okay too. I don't think there's anything prohibiting that from really going forward, but it's just acknowledging that that is something that the decision on this will not sort of imply a particular decision on that.
Right. No, we understand that.
So
Yeah, no, and to be clear, I completely understand that. I mean, based on this, anything that comes out of this or comes out of the planning commission, you haven't signed off that the septic plan is okay. You may say that you have to connect the sewer. That's the answer, and we have that conversation. But yes, I would understand that.
okay, so I think we've exhausted the conversation about that, about the sewer study, and it sounds like, Mr. Schoen, you're amenable. You'll proceed quickly to secure that feasibility study, and that's one of many items that we need to address as we go forward. So any other comments? And I'm going to refer to Jay and to Kayla. And the only looking at my watch, and time is, I'm way past where I should be.
John, David here. I had one naive question. I wondered what the point or the advantage is in the first place for extending the SMD on this side of Route 1.
You're referring to that was articulated at pre-app. There was that discussion. It was also discussed with staff, and it seemed to be the best, being that it is across the street and not contiguous by virtue of Route 1, but in essence, you know, it's an easy flip to the property that provides the intended uses proposed by the applicant. And that's why the SMD was discussed and is being used as it's an overlay district, as you know, and it has, and it just governs a lot of issues, a lot of uses that the applicant is proposing.
Okay. Thanks.
Very good. Anybody else have any questions or comments? What's the desire of the TRC at this point? Favorable advisory to move on to the planning board? Any stipulations? Kayla, based on your experience, any specific considerations for the TRC to consider when making this type of motion?
The quick answer is largely no, to be honest with you. I mean, this is a lot like any other sort of conceptual master plan, right? The comments that we talked about today, including outstanding items, can go forward to the planning board with an understanding that these are things that need to be addressed, right? So the merits of our conversation today go into a summary, but they particularly go into a table that gets used very directly to frame what the planning board, what the technical review committee thinks the planning board needs to look at when they're doing the review on this. At that point, I mean, unless there are things that the TRC wants to have it come back to you all for, that is sort of largely where you're at. The planning board I think we've identified the outstanding issues today. I haven't heard any other issues come up. It could at this point move forward to the planning board with discussion of these things to be had by them. We're advisory to them.
Okay. So do we have a motion in that regard?
I'll make the motion.
Second?
I'll second.
Very good. All in favor? I'll start with myself, Jay Parker. Aye. Wayne?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Oh, sorry. John Shuck?
Aye.
And Rich?
Aye.
Very good. I think we are all set.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right.
Is there a deadline, guys, that you would like those items requested that I should, or Jay, I can probably work with you or Kayla after if that's better.
Yeah. I think the sewer feasibility, in a perfect world, the quicker you can get it and we can get it turned around would be the best. As far as the application materials that were submitted, we have not formalized the completeness on that yet. I will be working on that after this meeting. So any information that you get you're prepared for, please feel free to forward it on to me and I'll include it in the application to the planning board.
Okay. I just had this alcohol service area to be delineated with something to look at, and I'm trying to see if there are any other items. And then making a statement of the outdoor speakers to be discussed. But I'll make notes with you on that, and we can figure it out. Thank you, everyone.
And then Ryan, maybe one last thing is the parking pieces.
The parking one. Yep, I had that on there too. Thank you.
Look, Ryan.
Great.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it.
You got it.
Okay, that concludes the TRC meeting. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second.
And by consensus, I'm going to say we are finished. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Very good.
Thank you, Jay.
Take care.
Take care.